Welcome to the She Hit Refresh podcast, a podcast for women age 30 and up who want to transform their lives by moving abroad. And if you're here, I'm guessing you kind of want to do the same, right? Well, welcome. I am so happy that you found us. First off, this podcast is brought to you by International Living. So let's jump into today's episode. I'm really excited to have Cait on the podcast. So Cait Church is a music marketing professional, full-time wanderluster, and typical Pisces. She has a passion for amplifying the voices of women in country music, and she built her career at a major record label as a marketing director and promotional director. But eventually, burnout, which I'm sure a lot of you can sympathize with, led her to change the trajectory of her one wild and precious life. She stepped away from hustle culture and embarked on an adult gap year, kind of a theme that we're touching on a little bit more this season. She traveled across Europe with her wife and their one-eyed Chihuahua mix, Winston. Now she's based in Valencia, Spain, and Cait is a freelancer picking up projects that are in alignment with her lifestyle, including collaborating with us here at She Hit Refresh, and we'll talk about that, and working in international marketing at an artist management company. So, Cait, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Very excited to have you on. And for our listeners here, let's start, before we get into your life in Spain and Valencia, let's take it back a bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your life before you moved abroad?
Yeah, sure. So I am 32 years old, originally from Kansas, but most recently was living in Nashville, Tennessee, where I built my career in the music industry, working at one record label for my entire tenure. And I just kind of worked my way up. And that involved a lot of travel and meetings at all hours of the day. And I never had nights and weekends to myself. So I dealt with a lot of burnout. But my wife and I, we moved to Valencia, Spain, most recently.
Love it. Well, we're going to get into all of that. And actually, I knew your wife before we met because she took my Move Abroad After 30 masterclass, which was called a boot camp at the time. For anyone who doesn't know, that's a 4-day live training that I do that helps you understand how to move abroad. It gives you the 4 essential steps to moving abroad. 2 of the big things we cover are, the work part and visa part, among other things. But she took that. She was actually part of my inaugural group back in, I think it was April 2023. Wow. And so really exciting that I think less than a year later of her joining my masterclass, you two were living in Spain. And I'd love to hear what sparked that decision to move abroad and why Spain.
That is so wild. I didn't realize that was your first class that you had done. It was actually really funny because we were just talking about it before I hopped on here with you. And I was like, do you remember some of the concepts that were talked about in that class? And do you remember what you learned? And she's like, let me pull out my notes. She still has them. She brought them on this move and she still has them. So I thought that was really cute.
Love it.
Yeah, but that was really helpful for us. So we just got to this point in our lives. She's 38 years old. And at the time I was 31. And I mentioned burnout and all of that, but also we just felt this drive to move abroad. We love traveling. We always could see ourselves living abroad when we did travel outside of the country. And I think we were just like, is what we're doing really it? Like this hustle culture, this grind, this just like constant stress. It's not really what we see our lives looking like long term. So we just decided to take the leap, which is exactly what it was. It was such a leap of faith, and step away from like the trajectory of climbing the corporate ladder and doing all of the things in the traditional ways that people do. And we decided to just redefine what our lives looked like. And so, we kind of identified through this class, we narrowed down like, okay, what visas are available and where, what are the names of those visas? And we just kind of started doing some research after that. And we realized, Spain and Portugal were the countries that most fit our lifestyle and what we were looking for, and also which ones had visas available. Also, weather is a big deal for my wife. She does not like to be cold. So we're like, where's warm? Where has a beach? And that's basically it.
Love it. And had you guys been to Spain and Portugal before you selected those two countries as your short list?
A couple of Christmases back, we took a trip to Spain together, and we did Malaga, Sevilla, and I'm forgetting where else. Oh, we did a couple towns around there, and it was wonderful. So on that trip, we realized, wow, we love it here. We could see ourselves living here, not actually having any intention to do that. It was just a vacation. And then separately, I had been to Portugal a couple years prior to that. So we had spent a little bit of time in the country, but until we decided to formally move abroad, we had not done a scouting trip or anything.
Okay, so at least you had seen, and you chose Spain. And we'll talk about visas. Maybe this is a good time just to mention that, because I think most people are listening probably get that to move to another country, if you are not a citizen there, then you most likely are going to need a visa to live somewhere long term. As I mentioned, that's something we go over in the masterclass, like what are the most viable visa options? And there's a few out there, but you guys picked a particular one that is actually going away. But can you tell us about, I guess, why Spain made sense? Probably from there was a visa and also the weather. Why Spain? And then maybe we could get into where you chose to live in Spain and why.
Yeah. So we are living in Spain on the Golden Visa. So that is, the formal name is the investor's visa or the investment visa, and it requires a minimum purchase of property in order to apply. It is going away in April of 2025, so it will no longer be available. And it was the best option for us because it was the easiest way we could find without having to be tied to a job and that kind of thing. We planned on freelancing, but at the time we didn't have contracts. We just wanted to take some time off. So what we did was we basically sold everything we had and put that towards our place here. And that's how we had the visa. And I know it's something that's going away, so it won't be an option for a lot of people moving forward, but that is how we are here.
Love it. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit later about visas coming and going and how they aren't etched in stone, but that's great. I mean, the golden visa is a great option for those that are able to make that investment. I mean, it's going away, so it's not an option anymore, as we've been saying, but it's great because not only does it give you residency in Spain, but it does also allow you to work. So whether you want to work in Spain, you want to be a freelancer and work, remotely for companies outside of Spain, it gives you a lot of options there. So it does have that flexibility. And that's great that you guys were able to get that visa, especially get it before it was gone. And now you're here and you came to Spain and you chose Valencia, which is a very popular place. We have another guest who also has moved to Valencia. But what made Valencia feel like the right fit for you both? And did you consider other locations when you were looking at Spain?
Yeah, we actually looked at property in Madrid too, because what's not to love about Madrid? But we ultimately landed on Valencia because, well, it's cheaper. That's a big one. But also, it's just so beautiful. It has everything we want. It has a beautiful historic city center. It feels very when you dream of what a Spanish city looks like and feels like, you dream about that old city center that Valencia has. But it's also on the Mediterranean. So we can take public transportation to the beach and be on the Mediterranean Sea in 20 minutes. It's amazing. But also we came here and the people are awesome. Everyone is so wonderful and lovely. It just has a really good vibe about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what attracts people there. It is a very popular place for foreigners moving to Spain. I would say Malaga, where I'm living, Valencia, Madrid, Barcelona. I love that you were considering Madrid, my soulmate city there.
It's the best.
It is. But tell us, so it has been, how long have you been in Spain now?
Because we took an adult gap year, we sort of bounced in and out of the Schengen zone quite a bit. But officially, formally, we closed on our place at the end of July. So it's been 7 months now.
Wow. Okay. And then was your gap year a year long prior to that?
One
How long?
whole year, yes. So we
So
spent 3 months in Spain and Portugal, just traveling around, figuring out which towns we liked. Then we had to hop out of the Schengen zone. And then we came back once we had identified Valencia and we started to house hunt. So that was all before we had a visa. I don't know that I would recommend that to the average person who is packing up their lives and moving abroad. I think the more traditional and safe route is to apply for a visa and know where you're going to live before you just sell everything and pack up and leave the country with a couple of suitcases.
okay, but it worked out for y'all.
It worked out. It worked out.
Love it. Okay. So then you took that adult gap year and then you made your official move. I would love to hear some of your reflections of walking away from that, corporate grind, hamster wheel, hustle, and taking that time and space for yourself, especially at an age, it's like an early retirement, taking at an age where you're in your prime, you're not waiting till retirement to enjoy life and not be tied to or defined by your work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real. It was scary, of course. Anytime you walk away from stability, health insurance, a paycheck that, you expect every 2 weeks, all of that stuff, your home, just your routines, the places you go, that's really hard. But for me, it was really freeing. It was exactly it felt like the right move, and it was exactly what I wanted it to be. And it was so nice to think about who I wanted to be outside of a job title or what musicians I was working with, because a lot of people in the world I was in are kind of defined by their roles. And I noticed just a lot of people were like growing up in the business and they had never done anything else and they didn't take a lot of vacations, but they didn't seem that happy. And I was like, I just don't want that to be my life. So I could see the future, the way I was headed, and it just wasn't what I wanted. So yeah, it felt scary, but it was such a great thing. And I would encourage anyone who feels that drive to just do it.
Love it. And did you have fears about how that could maybe impact your career negatively, having, walking away or having that gap on the resume, or just the unknown of maybe when you wanted to go back to the working world, where you would start and how that would work?
A little bit, sure. I think my wife cared maybe slightly more than I did about that. But the fact of the matter is that if there's a company who is not considering hiring me because I took time for myself to grow and expand my horizons, then that's not the company I want to work at. They're not the kind of company that's going to appreciate me and value me. And if that's the kind of thing that holds them back from hiring me, then I probably don't want to work there anyway. So I definitely felt a big shift in terms of my career, the place it was headed, and what I actually wanted. And now what I want is to work with people who I feel like share my values, understand that I might have a little bit of a non-traditional story, but I still have so much to offer. And sure, my resume might not be picture perfect because I took a year off, but isn't that what life's about anyway?
Yes. Amen to all that. And I think it's also just becoming more common to have those gaps or to have those mini retirements, adult gap years, whatever we want to call them. It's not so uncommon as it was, I think, before when yeah, as I talk about on this podcast a lot, I was a serial job hopper. So I had a lot of gaps on my resumes when I was working in my 20s, and that was in the 2000s, where it was very, very, very much frowned upon. But let's talk about your transition. So you've been in Spain now for 7 months. What has that change been like so far of living in Spain, not having the full 9 to 5, and just adapting or just, leaning into Spanish life here?
It's been awesome. I love it here. There are difficult things, as with any move, whether you're moving across town or across the country or to an entirely different country. There are going to be challenges. But ultimately, it's been really great. It's been really great. And mostly easy. There have been a couple hiccups along the way. Like navigating bureaucracy is a big one, especially when you're not fluent in the native language. And language barriers are also difficult. But to me, those things are hurdles that we just have to overcome to live the kind of life that we want to live. So it's been great. I've adapted to my lifestyle. I'm working on getting better at eating dinner later. That's been hard. But other than that, things are great. I love a siesta.
Yeah, I mean, Spain does have a great quality of life. And I think if you're coming from the US, you definitely notice the improvement.
Yeah.
Just a slower pace of life. People really prioritize being with the people that they love. I think it's a culture where people aren't as defined by their work as in the US. And so they have a life and identity outside of work. And you see that with people getting together. They're always on, terrazas is what we call them here, but just, they gather, they're outdoors because also there's nice weather here. And I think it's really interesting. Like people get together during the week, right? Like after work, you'll see people out and about where I don't think that happens so much in the US. So I feel like we have a more rigid culture in terms of how we spend our time.
Well, even just old men, they just go sit on a bench and they just chat for a couple hours with a beer in their hand, maybe. And then, it's just so cute. It's nice. Like people don't gather outdoors in the US, and yeah, it's wonderful.
Good. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. What do your days look like then? Wow. How do you spend your days?
Yeah, well, I tend to have meetings later in the day because I do work with people that are on Central Time in the US. So I have adapted pretty well to that because it gives me my entire mornings and early afternoons to do the things I want to do. I get up a little, definitely later than I would in the US. I go to the gym, I go to cafes, I go to the market, get some fresh fruits and whatever we're going to eat for dinner that night. I have been taking Spanish class, so I do that in the early afternoons. And then I start doing work stuff and late after that, and I work until, 8 or 9 p.m. generally.
And then do you have dinner after that?
Yeah, usually. If I can wait that late, then yes, I definitely have been trying to eat later. So
if you can hold out. Love it. Yeah, me too. Well, I mean, I've been here 9 years, but I think I've adapted. My lunch times are sometime around 2 or 3 p.m. and then dinners are usually 9.
That's good. That's good. Okay. That gives me hope.
Yeah, you can do it. Love it. Well, you did mention that you're here with your wife, and I think Spain is known as a very progressive and open, welcoming place for the LGBTQ plus community. But I'd love to hear from you, like for other couples that might be considering Spain, what has your experience been like as a couple living here?
It's been wonderful. It's been so normal, which is like the best thing it could be. Honestly, it feels better than when we were living in the South. So, it's nice to be in a country that values LGBTQ rights, and the US doesn't necessarily all the time. And it seems to be getting a bit worse in that regard. We were definitely feeling it when we lived in Tennessee. So even in December, I think Spain moved to enshrine gay marriage in their constitution as a right. So it's really nice when the government is making moves to say oh, you're valued. We care about you. We want to protect your rights. And that wasn't the norm in Tennessee.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't want to get too political here, but it does seem that rights are being taken away from people, or there's intention to. So we will see what happens in the US. But I think Spain is a great space, a great place for anyone in the LGBTQ plus community that's looking at Europe. I love how Spain is so welcoming and open and progressive.
Yeah, it really is. And everyone we meet that learns that we're married is wonderful about it. We've not had one negative experience with anyone. So not to say it doesn't happen, but we've had we've been well received here.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. Okay. And we talked about the golden visa, but I do just want to, because you guys came on the golden visa and there's lots of different visas for people who are interested in coming to Spain. There is probably the most popular ones are going to be the digital nomad visa, which is for remote workers. So if you have a remote job that you can bring with you, that's a pathway in. And then also the non-lucrative visa. And that's a visa, it's a retirement visa, but you don't have to be of retirement age. You just have to show that you have the financial means to support yourself while you live here. And there are other ways. There's a student visa, freelance visa, but I would say probably the digital nomad, non-lucrative, and the golden were the most popular. But I just want to touch on that real quick here because I'm not sure if this is going to be a trend that visas are being canceled or being taken away, but Portugal was actually the first country in Europe they didn't entirely cancel their golden visa, investment visa, but they restructured it so that property investments were no longer allowed under the investment scheme. So that happened, I believe, last year. I get the years a little mixed up now. And then Spain announced very recently that they're ending the golden visa in April. And I just want to mention this because visas come and visas go. So for anyone who's thinking of moving abroad and has identified a visa, just know that that may not be an option in the future. Like there's no guarantee. But as visas go, new ones come. So Spain and Portugal and Italy also recently all issued or launched their digital nomad visa. So it's important just to stay aware, stay informed of what's going on because visas are constantly changing. I love the story of how we met or how we were connected. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that because you had reached out to me in a way that just impressed me so much. And I use this story to let other people know, like, this is what you do when you want to create an opportunity for yourself.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah. So after my adult gap year or first retirement, as we jokingly call it, I really did some soul searching about the kind of work opportunities that I wanted to take on. And the pool is more limited when you are a freelancer and you're living abroad, and remote work is just really hard to find. So I thought to myself, what companies, what people align with my values, who gets me, and who would understand my kind of like unique situation. And so I started thinking on it and I was like, wait, who would understand my situation more than Seppi, who helps women over 30 move abroad? Like, amazing. I had been a follower for a couple of years and I was obviously aware of the masterclass through Lindsay, and I followed your Instagram and I got your newsletter. And so I was already a refresher in that sense, but I was like, how can I just help her out? Like, does she ever need help with anything? And what skills do I have that could be useful to her? So I sent an email and I was like, please don't be weirded out by me. I know you don't know me, but like, I know you and I think you're awesome. And I love the kinds of work that you do. And I would love to help you in any way that you need. And I listed some things that I thought could be of value to you. And you hit me back instantly. And you're like, yeah, actually, I can think of a couple of things you could help me out with.
Yes, you're amazing. I can't stress this enough because I have a lot of people in the community that are looking to either transition to freelance work or they're trying to find a remote job and maybe they don't know where to start or they're struggling to find work or transition. And I think, for a lot of people out there, the best way to do that is to create those opportunities for yourself because they're not just going to fall in your lap. And I want to share a little bit more about that email you sent me, but I just want to ask real quick, after your gap year, did you know that you wanted to freelance? Like, why did you choose freelancing opposed to maybe finding a full-time remote job?
I was open to that, but really freelancing, I think, fits my lifestyle and the kind of life that I want better. I want flexibility to be able to take on projects that I want to take on. In my last role, I would be handed projects and sometimes they would be very antithetical to my values. And I just had to do it because it was my job. So I wanted flexibility in terms of taking on the things I wanted to take on, but also when I wanted to take on projects. So that's ultimately why I think freelancing is the best option for me.
The method that you used was great. I mean, I also want to mention here Hannah Dixon's 5-day VA challenge. It's free for anyone who's interested in becoming a freelancer, a virtual assistant, or wants to transition to remote work with that kind of flexibility. I highly encourage you to take her free 5-day VA challenge, and we'll link that in the show notes, because she definitely talks about this of like identifying people in your orbit that you would like to work for, how you could use the skills that you have for an organization or someone that you're already connected to. And so I'm so happy that you reached out to me, because it's not just that you reached out to me, because I do get emails of people who are like, any way I can support you, I'd love to. I love the work you do. But for somebody who's looking to hire someone, and actually at the time you wrote me, I wasn't even looking to hire anybody. I was just in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm going to need help at some point. And what you did was so smart. And this is why it caught my eye in a different ways, because you really identified, you didn't just write a few things you could help me with. You were very specific with like 10 things that you identified, because you were in my orbit and maybe could see things that your skill set could help with. And I read that list and I was like, yes, I need help with this and that and that and this. Okay. Yes. Okay. And that saved me the time of having to identify somebody who could do those things. Because when you are running a business, you just want like a quick solution, right? You don't want to spend too much time on making decisions. So when a good opportunity comes to you, you can make a fast decision. And so I did write back pretty quickly and was like, yes, I have a project. Can you work on this like for deadline next week or something like that? So it was just great. And now I think that was sometime last fall. And now, we've been working together on a steady basis since then. I constantly am getting projects or things that I need help with. And I'm always like, hey, can you help me with this?
Yeah. It's been great. And I think that's the key to it is, especially if you're sending a message to somebody that you don't know, like you really have to make it apparent that you've done your research and you've identified things that they actually need. And you know who they are, like that you're not just copy pasting, sending a random email to the same, like 100 people, it needs to be really personal and feel authentic.
Yeah, definitely. I think, what do they say when you go on an interview? Like the interview starts like the moment you walk into the door. Your interview doesn't start when you're in the interview room. It's like when you enter that building. And so when you're vetting someone that you want to work with, like your email was already speaking for you. That was like part of the interview there. Like I loved your email structure and the homework that you put into it and the time you put into it. So that really spoke a lot to me, where I was like, she seems like she's solid. She's got it. Let's see. Yeah. And Cait also, so she's helped me with ongoing projects, but you helped with our last masterclass, behind the scenes. So if anyone joined that live, Cait was helping us on our live calls. So thank you so much.
That was amazing. That was a really, really fun thing to be a part of, because there were so many people in it and it had such a great energy.
Yeah, it was wild. 650 women on our last one. So it's great to have, people that you can trust and that you can rely on them to help you with a project like that. So thank you so much for that. So we talked a little bit about this, but if you could give any advice to listeners who are looking to maybe get into freelancing or struggling to break into it or not sure where to start, what would you tell them?
Oh, well, it's hard. So I get that. But the biggest thing that makes a difference in my mind is relying on your network and really tapping into it, and also asking for people in your network to keep you in mind for other things when they're out and about and they're hearing of things, like to mention your name. Those people you trust that have your back, like just rely on them to be out there too. But really, it's just a matter of reaching out to people. No one's going to reach out on your behalf without you like putting your name out there and putting your message out there. And sometimes it's going to feel really cringy and awkward, and that's okay. That's just part of it, So yeah, you have to use that network.
I completely agree. And I'll give a little example here of this podcast. Our podcast editor this season is actually one of my members from the Refreshers Lounge. And while she didn't hit me up directly and say, hey, I want to produce your podcast, just in the lounge, just letting people know that you're looking for work, what you're looking for in the lounge. She let us know, like, I'm looking for, to be a podcast manager. I'm looking for clients. So when the opportunity came up for me to relaunch the podcast, already knew someone, right? She had already told me this is what I do. And I, for one, love to hire people that I already know, right? That's why your network is so important because you've already built a reputation and built trust. And so it was a no-brainer to be like, hey, Kat, yeah, you want to produce the podcast, please?
That's awesome. I love that. And I love that you hire women too.
Yes, I'm very much pro hiring my refreshers to help me. All right. So let's talk about then. Okay. So you're in Spain. You've been here 7 months and maybe you're not even thinking too much in the future. Maybe you're just living in the moment and enjoying this, but do you have any plans for what's next for yourself? I mean, do you see yourself staying in Spain long term or are there other plans in mind?
No, I think we will be in Spain long term, at least based in Spain. We do love to travel. So I could definitely see us, living in different places for a month at a time here and there. But I think we'd really always like to be based in Valencia. Also, when we were in Madrid, we're like, how can we be here all the time? I could see us moving to Madrid at some point, but I don't know. I love Valencia. So the point is, I don't know. We love it here and we also love to travel. So it's just like you juggling all of the things.
Yeah, it's hard and there's no one way to do it, right? And luckily, I believe with your golden visa, you don't have a minimum number of days that you have to stay in the country, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big perk because when you do get a visa for a country, generally, that visa is issued for a year. And then at a year's mark, you can renew that and they give you another 2 or X number of years. But to renew that, there are some requirements that you have to meet. And one of those is having been a resident in the country for a certain amount of days. And usually that's at least half of the year. So that's just something to keep in mind that if you like a digital nomad lifestyle where you want to hop around a lot, you may not be able to renew a visa if you're going to be out of the country for too long. But just going back to there's no one way to do it. Like I feel like I'm in my digital nomad era. Like I spent a lot of my years here in Spain, really living in Spain for most of the year and then taking a week or 2 vacation here and there. But last year was the first year where I really wanted to explore more. And I probably spent almost 6 months, out of the country. And it was great. And I think I might replicate that this year too.
I love it.
See. We shall see. All right. So I love your journey. I love that you walked away from a great job to take that adult gap year and you did that for yourself and that you took that leap, to move abroad to a country that you hadn't lived in before. For anyone out there who's listening, who wants to move abroad, but feels like it might be just, scary, out of reach, complicated, or maybe like they're too old to be doing this. This is something for, someone who's out of college or at retirement age. What advice would you give to them?
Well, it is all those things. It is challenging and scary and hard, but it's also so wonderful. I cannot stress that enough. If you're the kind of person like me that it's just in your bones, like you've always wanted to do it, or at least had a pull that your life could look really different than it does, just do it. Sure, it can be really stressful and scary, but if you're always thinking of reasons not to, you could do that your entire life. I think a lot of people wait and wait and wait and they push it off and they're like, oh, I'll travel more in retirement or I'll do this when I have more free time. Like that's never a guarantee, right? So to me, if it's something that you're driven to do, just move forward, like take a step in that direction and start the process because it will be really wonderful.
This is something people ask about a lot is, what about your family when you move, right? Like, how do you stay in touch? Don't you miss them? And I know that your family came to visit you recently, but I'd love to hear how you managed to stay in contact, if you plan to go back to the US often, or how do you manage and stay connected with your family and friends back home?
Well, so for my family, none of them lived in Nashville. So regardless, I would have to get on a plane and travel to see them. Sure, now getting on a plane is a bigger one and it takes longer, but regardless, I would have to travel. It is hard at times because of the time difference, but I just make an effort to FaceTime. I mostly FaceTime with people as much as I possibly can. And even in a funny way, not having a job that was eating up so much of my energy, I have like more free space in my life to dive into friendships. So even though I'm further away, I do find that sometimes I am like talking to my friends or family more than I would anyway. And yeah, it's difficult. My brother and sister-in-law just had their first baby. So I am an aunt for the very first time. I'm so excited to meet her. That part has been hard because I want to be there and, I'm so far away, but I am getting inundated with pictures and FaceTimes. It's really nice. And I'm going to go meet her in a month. So it's great.
Love it. All right, Cait. Well, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey of moving to Spain with us. For our listeners out there who maybe want to connect with you or find you, is there anywhere that they can do that?
Sure. I have an Instagram. It's Cait, and that's CAIT, _C, Church. And yeah, that's where you can find me. It's mostly dog pictures.
Fabulous. Well, we will drop that in the show notes. Cait, thank you so much again for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and leave feeling like a move abroad is even more possible for you. If you're happy with what you saw, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a question or comment because I would love to hear from you. If you're ready to take action on your dream to move abroad, be sure to grab my visa guide to Europe. It's your roadmap to over 50 viable visa options in 19 countries. You can grab the link below in the show notes. And don't forget to get on the wait list for my next Move Abroad After 30 Masterclass, a masterclass for women age 30 and up, which is a step-by-step training to help you fast track your move abroad. And grab the link in the show notes as well. And last but not least, a huge shout out to our sponsor, International Living. Thank you so much for making this season possible. Until next time, ciao for now.